these little, then these little running around like I wasn't brought up. I was brought up toting slammers. Like, so my belt had to be extra tight. You feel me? Like the bird game, my nigga Punch Jim was popping, homie. Capo, I still fuck with you already know. I shout out to Melly and everybody. I still fuck with my in Harlem. It's all good.
I just was always a wild, loose kid in my neighborhood. I just always went for mine. I maintained myself. I knew how to hustle, and I definitely wasn't no punk.
Man, this one right here is pure New York street history. One of those moments that still gets whispered about in barbershops and hood circles to this day. The night Jim Jones, Harlem's own Dipset capo, got checked by Raw Diggs, a Brooklyn legend with real street credentials, in front of the whole hood. And if you know anything about Raw Diggs, you already know he wasn't the type of dude to talk twice. This wasn't rap beef, this was street business. To understand how wild this was, you gotta know who Raw Diggs really was. Born Ronell Wilson in the Gowanus houses of Brooklyn, Raw wasn't just another name in the streets, he was the name. A dude who lived what most rappers only rhymed about. He'd already built a reputation for being fearless, respected, and heavy in that underworld before he ever tried rapping. Even after catching cases and doing time, his name still held weight. By the late 2000s, Raw Diggs was moving like a street general, running his block, throwing flashy parties, and showing up in videos with rappers who wanted to stand next to real power. Now, on the other side, you got Jim Jones, Harlem's hustler turned rap star, talking fly, moving flashy, and flexing Dipset pride everywhere he went. At that time, Jim was living like a boss, designer dripping, moving through Brooklyn with cameras and trying to show love to every borough. But not everybody was feeling it. The streets don't care about fame, and when you're a rapper who mixes too close with real street dudes, the line between respect and pressure gets blurry real quick.
You blood from this day on, when you see us throw it up, you be putting way more work in than half these bloods that be out here and things like that. So you the homie now. When you see us throw it up, that's just that.
That's where the tension started. Word around Brooklyn was that Jim came through Gowanus acting like he ran with the big dogs, dropping names and claiming ties he didn't really have. Raw Diggs caught wind of it, and let's just say he wasn't amused. To him, respect was everything. You couldn't just walk into his zone, flex, and not pay homage. So when he heard Jim was out there talking slick, he decided it was time to check that energy. The night it happened, Jim Jones was reportedly moving through Brooklyn for a video shoot, surrounded by his team, cameras, and the usual entourage energy. But when Raw Diggs pulled up, everything changed. People who were there said you could feel the energy shift. Raw didn't come to smile or shake hands. He came to set things straight. He walked right up on Jim in front of the crowd and made it clear who really held power in that part of the city. The whole block got quiet. Now nobody knows the exact words exchanged, but witnesses say Raw pressed Jim about moving around Brooklyn without showing proper love, without checking in, and without giving credit to the real ones who held the streets down. Jim, trying to keep his cool, reportedly said it was all love, that he meant no disrespect. But Raw wasn't letting that slide easy. He told him, "This ain't no industry talk. This the streets. Don't play with my name." The crowd was frozen, watching a Harlem celebrity get humbled by a Brooklyn heavyweight right in the open. That's the thing about New York. Fame don't mean nothing if the streets don't co-sign you. And that night, Raw Diggs reminded everybody that when it comes to Brooklyn, you can't just walk in talking tough unless you really built for it. Even a Harlem boss like Jim Jones had to respect that.
I'm from the era where we sold the drugs, we didn't use them per se. That was the quote-unquote.
After that moment, word spread through the city like wildfire. Yo, Jim Jones just got checked by Raw Diggs in front of everybody. You know how fast New York talks. By the next morning, every block from Harlem to Brooklyn was buzzing, and the story kept growing with every retelling. Some said it was just words. Others swore Raw Diggs made Jim back down right there in the middle of the crowd. Either way, one thing was clear. Raw Diggs made his presence felt, and that wasn't just anybody checking Jim. Raw Diggs was one of those figures you didn't play with. He had the kind of reputation that came from real history, not hype. The man had survived shootouts, built influence behind bars, and came home to a hood that still moved when he spoke. He wasn't an internet gangster. He was the kind of dude that rappers rap about. That's what made this moment so big. You had a Harlem rap legend, backed by Dipset's fame, being humbled by a Brooklyn boss who didn't even need a record deal to have power. People started debating what really went down. Some said Jim tried to defuse it, saying it was all love between Harlem and Brooklyn. Others said he froze up because he knew Ra wasn't bluffing. Whatever the truth was, the hood already decided. Ra Diggs had checked him, and the story spread like gospel. Videos started circulating online, clips from that night, grainy footage of Ra talking loud, Jim staying quiet. The blogs had a field day. It was Harlem pride versus Brooklyn muscle, and Brooklyn walked away with the W.
Ra Diggs got 3 life sentences. You heard about this?
I actually seen it on, I think it was on your website yesterday, and I was like, and I feel bad.
Now, to be fair, Jim wasn't new to pressure. He's been through beef, street situations, all that. But this one hit different because it wasn't industry smoke. This was the streets reminding him that fame don't erase the rules. You can be a millionaire, but if you disrespect real ones, you still got to answer for it. That's the reality of New York's code, especially back then when respect meant more than money. After the incident, Ra Diggs started making noise in music himself. He dropped mixtapes, collabs, and interviews, talking about the industry from a street perspective. And in one of those convos, he threw shade at rappers who pretend to be tough on camera, but call security when it get real. Fans instantly linked it to the Jim Jones situation. He didn't name drop, but everybody knew what he was talking about. It was his way of saying, I don't do rap beef, I do reality. Jim tried to downplay it in later interviews, saying the streets exaggerate things and that it was all respect between men. But people who knew the story said otherwise. They said that night, Ra Diggs reminded Jim that every city got its own boss, and you can't wear the crown everywhere you go. Harlem might have been Jim's world, but Brooklyn? That was Ra's. The story didn't just show 2 men clashing. It showed what happens when industry image meets real street power.
They allege that Heron is guilty of racketeering charges for running a drug-dealing operation in the Gowanus housing development where he grew up. They also claim he was involved in 3 murders and 3 attempted murders.
After the story blew up, the streets crowned Ra Diggs as the man who humbled a rapper. Overnight, his street legend grew even bigger. But what made him different was that he never bragged about it. He didn't go online. He didn't record diss tracks. He didn't need to. The hood did the talking for him. That's what real power looks like. You don't chase attention, it finds you. Ra Diggs was already respected across Brooklyn long before this happened. He came up in the Gowanus houses, an area known for getting it out the mud. His life was filled with real war stories, shootouts, cases, years behind the wall. He was one of those dudes who came home from prison and went right back to the top of his block, like nothing changed. And that authenticity drew rappers toward him. You'd see guys like Uncle Murda and other Brooklyn names show love, because they knew Ra wasn't industry made. He was certified. That's exactly why the Jim Jones situation hit so hard. It wasn't just about one confrontation, it was symbolic. Harlem and Brooklyn had always had a friendly rivalry, but this reminded everyone that Brooklyn wasn't just fashion and talk, it was structure. Ra represented that old school street order, where respect came before fame. And when he checked Jim, it wasn't hate, it was enforcement. Like he was saying, you can rap about the life, but don't forget who really live it. Meanwhile, Jim was dealing with backlash. Fans started flooding his comments with jokes, memes, and questions. Some even said this is why Jim always keeps Harlem close. Because outside his zone, the love ain't the same. But give Jim his props. He never folded publicly. He didn't diss Ra back. He didn't try to spin the story. Instead, he went quiet. That silence spoke volumes. It was like he knew this wasn't a battle you fight on wax. This was street politics, and street politics get handled differently. Over time, Ra Diggs' name became larger than life. His interviews turned into folklore. His bars turned into street sermons. He was one of the few rappers who could talk about shootouts and indictments because he actually lived through them. And while he eventually got taken down by the feds, sentenced to life for racketeering and murder, his reputation in the streets never died. The same people who watched him check Jim Jones still talk about that day like it happened yesterday. And as for Jim, he learned a hard lesson. fame don't protect you from accountability, especially not in New York. Now, years later, the story of Rod Diggs checking Jim Jones still echoes through the streets because it represents something way bigger than just a confrontation. It's the eternal clash between industry fame and real street power. This wasn't just a rapper versus a gangster moment. It was a reality check for everybody who ever blurred that line between entertainment and the life that built hip-hop in the first place. Because out here, no matter how many hits you got, no matter how much ice you wear, the streets don't care about followers or record deals. The only thing that matters is respect. And in that moment, Rod Diggs reminded everybody what real respect looked like. Even after all these years, people still argue about what exactly went down. Some say Jim Jones handled it smooth, that he kept his composure and avoided escalation like a businessman. Others swear he got pressed hard in front of everybody, that Ra made him check his tone and his position real quick. The truth's probably somewhere in between, but one thing's for sure. That night changed how people looked at Jim. It humbled him in a way that interviews and chart success never could. Because while fame gets you recognition, credibility earns you silence. The kind that makes people think twice before speaking on your name. And Rod Diggs, he had that kind of silence around him. See, Rod didn't need to tweet, post, or brag about anything. His story already spoke for itself. He wasn't famous because of music. He was infamous because of reputation. Born and raised in the Gowanus houses of Brooklyn, Ra came from a place where survival itself was an achievement. Before the industry even knew his name, the streets already did. He lived every bar he rapped, every legend he built came from something that actually happened. So when he stepped to Jim Jones that night, it wasn't about ego, it was about balance. He felt like the game had forgotten its roots, that too many rappers were playing with codes they never lived by. And Jim, unfortunately, just happened to be the one standing in front of him when he decided to remind everybody how things really work. And that's what separates street figures like Ra from industry names. The music business runs on image. The streets run on reputation. You can fake an image, but reputation can get you buried if you mishandle it. Jim had Harlem behind him, no question. The Dipset movement changed fashion, sound, and attitude. But Brooklyn, that's a whole different energy. It's about presence, power, and principle. And that night when Rod Diggs walked up and pressed Jim in front of the whole block, that was Brooklyn speaking, the unfiltered voice of the streets reminding Harlem that respect don't transfer by fame alone. Now, it's not like Jim didn't know the rules. He grew up around real ones too. Harlem's its own jungle, flashy but fierce, built on hustle and quick thinking. Jim's always carried himself with pride, always represented his city loud and clear. But sometimes pride can blur your vision. When you step into another man's territory, the code says you acknowledge the hierarchy, not because you're scared, but because it's respect. That's what Ra was enforcing. Not humiliation, but structure. He wanted to remind the industry that Brooklyn ain't a backdrop for photo ops. It's a city full of people who built their legacy with blood, not beats. And what's wild is, even though Rod Diggs eventually got locked up and hit with a life sentence for racketeering and murder, his legend never died. In fact, that situation with Jim Jones only amplified it. To this day, his name still rings bells across Brooklyn and beyond, not just because of the crimes or cases, but because of the way he carried himself. When he checked Jim, he didn't scream, he didn't throw hands. He just talked with that quiet authority that real power gives you. And the hood saw that. That's why the story still holds weight today. It wasn't about a rapper being bullied. It was about a boss reminding another man that every borough got its own code, and no man's bigger than that. Meanwhile, Jim took that lesson and applied it. He didn't double down or retaliate. He evolved. He started focusing more on business, real estate, and expanding his brand outside the streets. He matured publicly, turned his grind into long-term money. That shift didn't come out of nowhere. The old Jim might have clapped back, but the grown Jim learned that not every confrontation needs a comeback. Sometimes walking away doesn't make you soft, it makes you smart. And honestly, that's the kind of growth that keeps people like him alive in a game where too many let pride write their obituaries. Still, if you talk to people in New York, they'll tell you, that night in Brooklyn changed Jim's aura. It reminded him that fame might get you applause, but it doesn't protect you from accountability. Because in the streets, you don't get to control your narrative. The people do. And that night, the people crowned Rod Diggs as the one who reminded Harlem's flyest that the streets still run their own scoreboard. Even now, you can feel the ripple effect. Whenever someone mentions checking in, street validation, or industry versus authenticity, this story comes up. It's one of those cautionary tales that rappers tell each other quietly. A reminder that no matter how far you climb, you can always get brought back to the concrete if you forget who's really watching. So yeah, maybe Jim Jones didn't get punked. Maybe he just got reminded that New York still got rules. Harlem's about hustle. Brooklyn's about dominance. Bronx is about roots. Queens about money. Staten about legacy. But across all boroughs, the code stays the same. Respect who built it before you claim it. That's the real message behind this story. Rod Diggs didn't just check Jim Jones, he checked the whole industry's mentality. He reminded rappers that street credibility ain't a prop, it's a price. And while Jim took that hit and kept it pushing, the lesson stayed permanent. Fame can open doors, but respect keeps you from getting locked out. That's why even today, when you mention that moment, heads still nod in recognition. Because deep down, every rapper, every hustler, every fan who understands the code knows the truth. Rod Diggs didn't embarrass Jim Jones that night. He educated him. And in the game of survival, that's the kind of check you only get once.